Hey everybody, this is Alex Merced from alexmercedcoder.com, and this is another video in our React video series where we're going over React. Okay, so let's see here. We had this project we started in our basic folder, nothing crazy, so let me just open it up with live server. That was it, nothing crazy. Just showing you some of the functionality, some of the features. So in the first video we talked about state. So we talked about how we could use set state. Using the set state function, it automatically re-renders the component. We talked about how you could pass in props to a component, so that way it can receive that data from the outside. And then we just talked about setting up components. Now, just to make this a little bit more readable, let's create little borders for our components. Okay, I'll just kind of copy and do that. So we know where one component ends and another component begins. Cool. And then I'll just say here. This is where we render to the DOM. Now, what I want to talk about today is what's called the useEffect hook. The useEffect hook is what you use in functional components to generate what's called lifecycle. Lifecycle generally, it means running functions at different points in a component's, well, lifecycle. So the way it works here in React for functional components is you have to use this function. So let's just create it. React.useEffect, and then inside this function you pass in an arrow function. Cool. Now in this function you can do whatever you want. Keep in mind that this function is going to immediately run when the component first loads on the screen. So nothing has to trigger it, it just is automatically triggered. So I do console.log. I just started. Okay. So then what's going to happen is if I go over here and I open up the console, you see I just started. And I refresh the page, I just started. Okay. Now, if I do that, it could possibly repeat multiple times. So if you want to avoid sort of an infinite loop, usually what you want to do is you want to pass in this empty array. This empty array is called the dependency array. What it is, it's variables that if they change, should trigger an update of this, or rerun of this thing. So if I put in state in there, when this particular state variable updates, it's going to cause this function to run again. So if that's the case, one thing you don't want to do is set that particular piece of state inside this function. Because if I set state in here, and state is a dependency, it'll set the state, trigger a rerun of the function, which will set state, trigger a rerun of the function, etc., etc., etc. So, you know, be careful what your dependency is versus what things change in the useEffect. Let's see here. So I just started, it ran once. So now if I click me cheese, it's going to change state, because that's what we did in the first video. And see, it ran again. You can see that 2 there, meaning it ran again. Cool, right there. Okay. Now, let's say you wanted something to happen when the component gets removed. Then what you do is you do return, and then you return another arrow function. And this arrow function then occurs when the component is done. So if later on you remove the component from the screen, that function will trigger and run. Yeah. So in this case, this component's app's going to always be on the screen, so that's not going to get triggered. But that's how this works. And what is this particularly used for? It's particularly used for like making API calls to your API for data you need right away. So let's make another piece of state. We'll say const posts, set posts equals react.useState, and we'll say it starts out as an empty array because this is going to be our array of blog posts. So let's go get some blog posts from JSON placeholder. So here we go, posts. So what we're going to do is in our lifecycle function, and I'll just keep this an empty array. We're going to do a fetch. And then with any fetch, we have to do a .then, response.json, because we're converting the response into JSON data, because it comes in as like a readable stream. And then the next .then actually gets the resulting data. So we'll just say data. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to say set posts, and posts will now equal data. Okay? And now that's going to happen right away when the page loads. So now if I go to my dev tools, my React dev tools, and I click on app, oh no, it's actually in, what component did I just do that in? Oh, that was in stuff. Okay, so in stuff. So let's go to stuff. And then we see here, we have another piece of state. We have the state that's cheese, and we have another piece of state that has all these blog posts. Very nice. So now what I can do with those blog posts is render them to the screen. Okay, so let's change the JSX that this renders. Okay, so this originally had this button here. I'm just going to get rid of it for now. Instead, what we're going to have is like a UL. And then what we want to do is loop over that array of posts, and that's where the map comes in. Okay, the array map function. So I'm going to do a JavaScript expression, so I want to use curly brackets, so I'm interpolating back into JavaScript world. And I'm going to say posts, because that's the array, posts, dot map. And then I can loop over each post, and I just need to return a piece of JSX. Okay, to keep it simple, I'll just do the title for each one. Okay, return h1, and then with body, a post dot title, I think it is. Okay, let's take a look what happens. You can see once it loads up the posts, it renders them. Okay, nice. That's the beauty of that. And you can do like multiple JSX posts. The only thing you have to really kind of worry is sometimes it'll error because you don't initially have the data. So you might have to use like a ternary operator to just check to see if the data exists. But for a simple one like this, it usually is just fine like this. So that's how you kind of loop over things in React. You just use normal JavaScript. Because at the end of the day, all that matters is JSX. So all this map is doing is that it's looping over my array and returning in a JSX element for each item, and then I'm just putting all that JSX on the screen. That's all map is doing. Okay, so however you create an array of JSX elements, that's up to you, but map is sort of the standard way of doing it. Cool. Okay, so we learn how to use, but that's how I would use useEffect. Okay, I would grab the data right away when the component starts, stash it in the state, that causes the component to re-render. So now this array is going to have a bunch of data in it. So then when it goes to re-render this, there's going to be a lot more in there. So that's how the lifecycle function works. That's how this useEffect function works. So we know we have useState for state, for creating those variables that trigger re-renders. We have useState for when you want something to happen like right away. And yeah, and we have props, which we can pass data in. And again, if we want to use functions, you would just, well, we'll come back to that because I got rid of the one function we did set up. Cool. So I'll see you guys in the next video. Have a great day and enjoy.